In 2014, Mega Bloks released the Hierarch's Shadow Convoy set. It was released as part of their Halo 2 Anniversary collection and is one of those sets to this day that many people would like to have, myself included, but most people don't have. It's a bit of an obscure set in itself. It's based on a vehicle that is relatively underwhelming in the Halo world. The Shadow first featured in Halo 2. It's effectively a troop and vehicle carrier. But the main lure for the set, especially at the time, was the figure selection. It came with 2 Marines, an exclusive Sergeant Johnson, the Prophet of Truth, including his anti-gravity throne, as well as 2 Jackals, 3 Elite Honor Guards, and an exclusive Arbiter figure. It's my understanding that this set wasn't widely distributed at the time of release, and ever since it's just become more and more difficult to get your hands on. So if, like me, you would like one, you're generally going to be looking at paying a premium on eBay. So let's take a look and see how much money you've got to part with to get one of these sets today. So if we hop onto Google and do a quick Mega Bloks Shadow Convoy for sale, see what that brings up. Top search for me is eBay UK, Anniversary Collection Hierarch's Shadow Convoy, not currently available. Look on another eBay listing, there's one here, but this one is just to say it's been sold £300. It doesn't necessarily mean it was sold for £300. That looks like what it was up for, plus it was the best offer, so somebody may have got that for maybe $250, $270, or they may have well paid $300. But this was a brand new in box example, and for a set that originally cost around $54, I believe, £300 just isn't something I can live with, unfortunately. As much as I do love collecting Mega, I've got very strict rules about how much I'm prepared to pay for certain items, and I'm not prepared to pay £300 for something that originally cost $54, no matter how rare or old it is. If we pop Mega Bloks Shadow Convoy into the eBay search, we can have a look, see what's currently available. So as you can see, there's another one here brand new for £450. No thank you. Another one used for £268, which looks to be a complete set by the looks of it. So still paying a rather large premium there. If we scroll down and do a search of sold items, we can see how many of these have sold recently and how much they've sold for. So this one here for £120, I actually looked at this one and considered it, but I still wasn't prepared to go £120. I just don't want it that badly, unfortunately. As you can see, £225 for a used one, £135 for a used one. So there's not a huge amount of them for sale, but they do come up every now and then. I've never received one in a haul, and I've never seen one go for less than £100, I don't think. So what's the alternative? Well, there has to be an alternative, doesn't there? And for me, the alternative was to maybe build my own. And so that's exactly what I did, and this is the result. As you can see from a glance, it looks like a Shadow Convoy, or a Shadow from the Shadow Convoy set. And it should do, because I downloaded the instructions from the internet so I could potentially try to build this like for like. I knew from the very get-go I wouldn't be able to build it in the same colour, because that colour is a relatively unique colour. I think it's the colour they've used for the Scarab and a few other sets, but not many. There's a Ghost in that colour, and I think a Revenant in that colour as well, but I don't actually have that Revenant, so I can't say for sure. I also don't have the Scarab, but ultimately I knew I wasn't going to be able to build it out of the original colour. But I thought, you know what, I don't care. If I could build it in Covenant Purple, I'd be just as happy as that, and it would make it quite unique. So I went through my part selection, looked through what I had, thought, yeah, there's nothing major unique in these instructions apart from the canopy piece. That was the big sticking point. I knew I didn't have that piece, and it was only when I was going through my drawer of different cockpits and canopies that I've got spare in my collection that I saw these 2 pieces that I knew weren't from Halo sets, but I'd been holding on to because they came in a haul, so I just put them with the rest of my canopy pieces. And that was when I realised that those 2 pieces are from a Call of Duty helicopter, and they're the exact same mould as on the original Shadow. They're just not painted. Now ideally they would be a matching purple, but I wasn't going to go about starting to paint them or anything like that. For me, this was close enough. And at this point, all I wanted to know was, could I effectively build it from the instructions? I didn't want to create my own version of a shadow. I wanted to try and do a like for like color swap of the original shadow. And as I say, at a glance, it does look like I pulled it off. But if we take a closer look, I will point out all of the compromises that you may not be able to see from here, but there are a lot of compromises where I had to make a few exceptions to the instructions. One of the first things I did once I'd got this finished was actually I did add something. I added these 4 clear dome pieces. The original instructions don't have those, and I don't know why. Mega used them in many sets for this reason, so they skate around on a worktop better. So for whatever reason they don't use them, but I felt they were an added improvement. So these pieces along here, these grey pieces, these slopes are too gentle. They're supposed to be the steeper angled pieces, and they're also supposed to be a 1x1 slope attached to a 1x1 plate, and you put that 1x1 tile on top. I didn't have those in this colour, and this colour, in case you're wondering, is Cybertruck grey, so I substituted them with these. This part at the back is also incorrect. It's not supposed to be a 1x3 plate with a 1x3 tile and then a gentle slope. It's supposed to be a 1x5 part slope with a 1x2 plate underneath, and then you just stick a 1x2 tile on top. Those purple slopes at the back, they're not correct either. They're supposed to be an extra 1 stud longer, but I didn't have those, so I put a 1x3 instead of a 1x4 and just filled in the gap with a 1x1 tile. The piece that goes in the middle is also slightly incorrect. The slopes on the side are supposed to be brick slopes, whereas I didn't have those, so I used the studs on side, 1x1 brick, and then I just put those gentle slopes there. So the silhouette still looks the same, but the pieces are incorrect. Up underneath here, these purple slopes that are a 2x2 high inverted, they're supposed to be a 2x3 high. Didn't have any of those in that color. I don't know if they exist. So I did this instead, a 2x2 high with a 1x2 brick on top. And although it's not by the instructions, I still think it works absolutely fine. These grey bricks here are also supposed to be a 1x2x3 grey inverted brick. I didn't have those, so as you can see, I just used some shallower pieces and basically stacked them up to make the same size. You do get that ridge in the middle, but not the end of the world, and certainly not something that really stands out unless I point it out. These sections on the top are also incorrect. These slope pieces are supposed to be bricks again, like that central bit below. Once again, I didn't have those, so I used the brick with a stud on side and those slope pieces just to give the same silhouette of that part of the build. There was also other areas where I probably should have used a 1x4 brick, but if I didn't have them, I used 2x2 bricks, but you wouldn't know if I didn't tell you. The central hump behind the canopy is also wrong. Those 2 pieces that make the main part of the hump up are the wrong shape. Again, the proper part doesn't exist in that Covenant purple. And the little piece on top, that's not supposed to be there. The actual correct piece didn't look right on top of those substituted pieces below it. So I opted to just make that bit up just a little bit. But again, I think it looks absolutely fine. Inside, the canopy is pretty much the same as it should be, apart from the 2 gear shift handles or the control handles. They're supposed to be straight up. These ones have got a right angle crank on them simply because that's what I had. And then as we move back down to this central part, it's designed to be removed if you didn't know. This is the part that carries the troops. That's why it's got these studs on it, and it's supposed to have the studs with those pegs on both sides, but unfortunately the double-sided stud block was something that I didn't have, so I don't have those pegs on the other side. But again, something that I can live with. It's certainly not the end of the world, and that's just for if you're carrying the actual troops on it. The reason it's designed to be removed is because in the instructions it shows you can actually connect a ghost to it, and it's this ghost that they advertise connecting to it. This is the color that this shadow should be, this kind of iridescent purple, and this ghost is designed in a way that if you just pop the cowling off the back and then you remove this section here, which is just clipped in, you can just add in this additional part, which I'm not sure whether it actually comes with the Convoy or whether it comes with the Ghost. I've never built either of these sets brand new. You just simply clip that into the back of the Ghost, and then the back of the Ghost clips into the back of the Shadow, and then it just rests on those slopes at the front of the Shadow, and basically looks super cool. And it's surprising how these vehicles are obviously a different colour. They match quite nicely. It's not as bad or contrasting as I thought it would be. You almost get away with it, but almost isn't really what I'm after. So I thought, well, why put that ghost in there when you could put the right colour ghost in there? And I just so happen to have a ghost the right colour. So I haven't modified the back. I've just stuck a 2x3 clear plate on the bottom of it, and it fits in quite nicely, and it makes it look like this ghost was designed to go with this Shadow. So I'm really pleased with that, and I'm super pleased that I managed to complete this build in a colour swap. And I know it's not 100%, but I am going to keep it together, and I'm really pleased I used that Cybertruck grey. I think it contrasts the purple really well, and I'm not overly bothered about the canopy. Although, speaking of the canopy, it did give me another idea. It got me thinking, what happened to all of those shadows that we come across in Halo 2? You come across them in the underground tunnels, and the chief kills all of the Covenant that are manning them, and then they're just left in the tunnel. That seems like a waste. Surely the UNSC would be able to put this high-tech gear to good use. It's well documented that the UNSC reverse engineer both Covenant and Forerunner technology to their benefit. So why would they not just use Covenant vehicles? It seemed to make sense to me that if it's such good technology, why bother turning it into this or this or this? Why not just paint them green, slap on some UNSC badges, and be on your way? After all, you know what they say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And we all know Covenant tech is far superior to the UNSC at this point in the war. So with all those thoughts in my head, I started thinking, I wonder what that would look like. Wow, why wonder? Why not just make it? Well, I guess that answers that question, doesn't it? Looks pretty good. I really do think the UNSC are missing a trick here. They need to just paint these vehicles green and use them for their own. When you think about it, the UNSC doesn't really have a ground-based delivery system for troops and especially vehicles. Yes, they have the Warthog, which you could kind of class as a troop delivery system, but technically it's one in the back on the gun and one in the passenger seat, and then you've got your driver. This is obviously capable of delivering a lot more troops. In-game, I'm not sure how many troops it can deliver, but on here you can obviously fit 6 underneath the bridge section, and then you can fit many more on top. So what did I do here? I pretty much built this the same way as I built the other one from instructions. There are a few exceptions on the parts because I didn't have certain parts in the right colour, in the right shape. But once again, I personally feel it's close enough that at a glance, you wouldn't necessarily know. And after all, this is just a bit of fun. It's not me saying this is a direct replica. You can't create either of these versions from the current parts library. There are some parts which I'm convinced just don't exist, but this one is actually closer than the Covenant purple one. There were more parts available in this colour than the Covenant purple. The big bridge sections that you use to put this together, if you do by chance look at the instructions, don't exist in this green. So I just brick built them and strengthened them up with the rest of the parts. So that worked out okay. Stickers wise, I've just taken those off of other sets. Some of them are peely, so you'll have to forgive that. I couldn't be bothered to go through the whole sticker refurbishment process just for this video, especially if I don't end up leaving these together. Although at this point, I think I might. I really like this vehicle, and I think it just looks like something that could exist in lore. As much as I know they don't do this in game, I firmly believe not only should they, but they probably would. Why would they not use these vehicles if they were left after a battle at their disposal? Why would they just set them on fire, burn them, or melt them? It makes sense to use them. And if we're going to continue on the assumption that they would use them, then why wouldn't they use other Covenant vehicles that they come across on the battlefield? Like, I don't know, the Ghost, maybe? Now, this Ghost wasn't as easy to replicate. There's just some pivotal parts from the Covenant Ghost that don't exist in UNSC Green. So I thought, who cares? Let's make it a UNSC version. something that looks more UNSC. So I intentionally changed some parts out that I could have kept the same, like the wings. I've made them more angular because UNSC builds do tend to be more angular. The front piece is the main part that didn't exist in some of the back pieces. Now obviously you'll recognise most of these pieces from other UNSC sets, but I still think it looks like a good variation of the UNSC getting their hands on a Covenant Ghost and making it their own. Although Covenant Ghost, we can't just keep calling it a UNSC Ghost. They need proper UNSC names, and I think that for the Ghost, the UNSC Shark would be very fitting. It looks like a shark. It would sweep its way through on the battlefield, elegant, and it's so aggressive looking with those angular pieces. And then as for the actual Shadow, I think that should be called the UNSC Mule. If you think you've got a better idea, drop it down in the comment section below and I'll be sure to have a read. Once again, I could have just left it there, but I thought actually, I think there's more here. I then thought, why wouldn't they just use this as a hauler, a freight mover? So I got this crate from the Smuggler Intercept set, and it turns out it fits in there perfectly. You pretty much didn't have to modify anything. I just had to move some of the connecting tiles on the top of the crate, and it just pops straight on. Now, how right does that look? You could just imagine the UNSC pulling up to offload some goods. They can just open up this door, the troops can come up to it, offload all of the stuff, and then it can be on its way. Or it could just literally dump the entire crate there, leave it with the troops, and then go off to collect something else. It just makes sense. It just looks right, doesn't it? But there's even more on top of the more. I thought about this as a hauler and I thought there's more here. I think the UNSC would actually put more of their own touch on this. This is pretty much just painted green. And I thought, what would the UNSC? They'd want more guns, wouldn't they? So I wonder what it would look like with more guns. Wow. Why wonder when you can just build it? Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce the UNSC Mule Heavy. As you can see, it's got some guns. Now, there is a purpose to this. I didn't just try and plaster it with guns for the sake of it. I see the other version as just purely a behind the scenes, way back off enemy lines, just a freighter, basically just getting stuff to places, whereas this would be more of an escort mule when they need to get stuff to the hot zone, the front line, more important stuff, but they need it to be able to defend itself. Yes, the other one had one of the chain guns on the roof, but you're going to need more than that. As you can see, this one's got the anti-aircraft rocket pod on the front, so they can protect themselves from air assault. And then on the back, you've got the two heavy machine guns with a good range of motion. They've both got defense guards in front of the gunners there for their lower bodies as well. And then on the front, you've got some heavy machine guns, which the driver can control. And then down below that, you've also got some more light machine guns, or maybe even they could be flamethrowers. And then also alongside the actual bridge section across the top, I basically bulked out and increased the armor along there and added these spikes just to deter any rogue Sangheili that might get a little bit too close and feel like they can just climb up on board that bridge. It's effectively like a barbed wire trap alongside the bridge just to deter any climbers. And then the only other addition that I added to this one was I added some headlights and taillights, because realistically, if these are going to be UNSC vehicles and they're going to be hauling freight and so on, the UNSC would rig them up with headlights. All their other vehicles have headlights and taillights, so why not attach them to this? Safety first, after all. So that's the armament of the actual Mule Heavy, but what would it be used for? Well, I'd envision this being used for, say, delivering, I don't know, mongoose to the front line. As you can see, it's very capable of delivering 2 mongoose at once, which it can just pull up and then you can just drop them off. They connect very easily to the actual pegs with these little brackets that I made up, and there's just some hooks underneath the bridge section which allows them to hang from the bridge section, which I think in real terms, it's probably a pretty realistic way to transport these mongoose, that they can be detached very quickly if needed. So there's your mongoose delivery system. And then finally, in case you needed something a little bit more heavy, and I appreciate these aren't actually attack vehicles, but these old Cyclops, they fit in there real nice. So maybe they need these Cyclops to turn up to the front line, or maybe just behind the front line to do some heavy lifting. Maybe they need to clear some debris from old wrecked vehicles. You could bring these Cyclops in and they can do the heavy lifting so the Marines don't have to. But ultimately, these mule heavies would make a great addition to the UNSC ground forces, whether it's delivering troops, cargo, ammunition, or just simply Marines. And that, my friends, is how you go from having no shadows to 3 very unique shadows just by using the parts in your collection. I'm personally really pleased with how all 3 of these turned out, and I will be keeping them together and putting them on display once I find somewhere to actually put them on display. But I'd like to hear your thoughts. Which one's your favourite, and would you be interested in seeing more Covenant vehicles colour swapped to the UNSC? And until then, as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.